Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Masks Off. I am Kim.
And I'm Tia.
And today we have a guest with us and so excited for this conversation and to see where this goes. So today we have with us Dara Kurtz, and she will share her bio in her own words in just a moment. But I will start with our quote as we normally do. And this quote is from you, Dara. So that's apropos. So the quote is, listen to your heart. Listen to that pull you might feel inside yourself and be willing to go down a new path. You never know what you'll discover or find. That's from Dara. So Dara, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you want to share with our listeners and viewers a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I love that quote. And, I think it kind of encompasses my story. So I love that you shared that quote. I am the creator of crazyperfectlife.com and an author. My most recent book is I Am My Mother's Daughter, Wisdom on Life, Loss, and Love. And I'm a speaker, a mom, all the things.
Love it. And I love the title of that book. Oh my God. I said to Tia when I saw it, I love that. So I'm interested in hearing more. But Tia, you are going to ask a question.
Yeah, just to start us off, just because your story is so powerful of where you are today and how you've taken your experiences and created this amazing podcast or blog that you have and the books. Do you mind sharing just some of your story and your background? Because I think it really will resonate with so many people.
Sure. So I think my story is really kind of a lesson in that life is not linear. If you had asked little Dara a long time ago, I would have said like, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this. And, everything's going to just work out perfectly. And it's all going to be like clean and neat and linear. And as we all know, life is messy and, there's so many things we can't control and we do the best we can. But a little bit about my story. So my mom passed away a few weeks after I had my first daughter, and my mom was my person. We talked every day. We were super close. And then I found myself in this space where I was thrilled to be a new mom, but absolutely devastated at having lost my mom. And I was in my late 20s. I really had absolutely no skills to navigate through that. I was the first person in my circle, if you will, that had really lost a parent. And at the time, I was a financial advisor and really successful, checked all the boxes. And so I just sort of dove back into life. And I always say that grief followed me around like my shadow because it really was always there. I would go to a birthday party and see all the other, the grandparents there. And I would just feel that sadness just kind of all the time. But life got busy and we were blessed to have another daughter. And then when I was 42, out of the blue, one day I heard the words, "You have cancer." And at the time, my kids were 11 and 14, and it was breast cancer. But it really triggered me. It brought up a lot of things that I felt when my mom passed away. And I didn't even realize a lot of this until I wrote the book, until I kind of, years had gone by and I sort of processed things. But it was obviously an incredibly hard time for me, for my family. I was really lucky. We found it early and I had a lot of tools in my toolbox, but I wasn't someone that sailed through chemo and I needed to be as aggressive as possible. And it was just, one of the most challenging times of my life while trying to show up and be a mom to my two daughters. And it was one of the most challenging times of their lives at that time, of course. So then fast forward, and one day around the 20th anniversary of my mom's death, I remembered that I had this bag of letters in my house, and we can talk about sort of how, but basically I ended up finding a bag of over 100 letters that mostly were written to me by my mom and my two grandmothers. And they're the three strong women who really had loved and raised me, and they had all passed away. And so I was sort of just in this space of not really believing that, I found these letters, but also kind of trying to have the courage to open them, because I was so afraid that it would trigger a lot of the grief and sadness that I'd worked so hard to overcome. And just one night, finally, I was sitting on the couch and I was just like, screw it. I want to see what these letters say. And I started reading them, and I started just sobbing, crying, what Oprah calls the ugly cry, because I felt like I was having a conversation with my mom. I could hear her words and her voice and feel her personality. And it had been over 20 years since I had gotten to really hear her words and feel her personality. And it really made me realize just so much about life and loss and connection, and how I'm the person who sort of bridges my daughters with my mom, and how all of us are just kind of, we're a point in our family, and there are people that came before us and people that will come after us. And it helped me think a lot about traditions and leaving a legacy and being intentional, and so many things. So
Mm.
that's my story.
Oh my gosh, I am like triggered in so many ways and have so many freaking questions. I'm like, okay, where do I start? Where do I start? Oh my gosh. Well, I think the first thing I want to maybe ask you is, and maybe it's a two-part question, is one, did you go through any kind of formal grief process? Like, did you work with anyone? Did you have any kind of formal grief processing? Number one. And then number two, you said that it was really hard for you to open up those letters for a really long time. And I think I can relate on some level. My mom, it'll be 2 years in January since she died. And obviously I had a much longer life, with hers. I was 51 and she was, 78. But I literally, like, in my desk drawer, I have like pictures from the funeral home of her here. And like, when I open the drawer, I can't look at the picture.
Mm.
And, or if I see her face, I like get jolted. And I don't like know if that's like a part of not fully processing the grief, and I know in the beginning, like, I cried a lot, and, Tia knows what I went through in the very beginning. And you said even after 20 years,
Yeah,
you had the ugly cry. Like, tell me more about that.
it's really interesting. So I did go through counseling, and I did at the time join a grief support group through hospice. At that time, I just had my daughter, and so I was like busy having a full-time job and dealing with all this grief, and I really like kind of threw myself into work. And that first year, I like was like the top 10 person in my company for production. And when I look back on that, I'm like, okay, a new mom who just lost her mom should not be like that successful. And right. And so, I kept being praised, like, oh, Dara, you're managing it all so well. And basically what I was doing is I was not dealing with any of it, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think I just kind of got used to not dealing with it. And so I didn't fully let go of the sadness and pain. And even now, it's been 22 years. There are still times when I am triggered, and I find myself, I'm even surprised. Recently, my daughter, Zoe, who is my oldest daughter, she just had her tonsils out, and it's been like a shit show in my house during Thanksgiving. And, a 22-year-old getting their tonsils out is just not really a super fun time for anyone in the family.
Yeah.
But that actually, that experience, it really shocked me, but it triggered me, because I saw like how much I was like caring for my daughter, and I was so happy to do it. But it was making me kind of like miss my mom, because I was thinking like, no one takes care of you like your mom is going to take care of you. And it just, so I still get triggered, and I still have those times when I feel just such sadness. And I've learned to kind of let myself feel all the feels. I mean, it's when we don't let ourselves feel them that we get in a lot of trouble, and
Right.
it doesn't go anywhere but stays in our body, and that's not helpful for anyone.
Right.
And so, I'd still go to a counselor. I mean, my mom was actually a counselor. So
Mhm.
I think the whole country, the whole world would benefit from seeing a counselor. I forced my daughters to see a counselor, at least once a month virtually. They're both in college now. I'm like, I don't care if you don't think you have anything to say. Show up once a month with your counselor. And because I think everyone, has things that we can work on to be our best selves. But regarding the what you have in your drawer, I think that when you are ready to look at that, you'll know,
Mm.
and there's no pressure. There doesn't need to be any pressure. And maybe you should move it to a different spot so that you're not opening the drawer. I imagine you open that a lot. I mean, it's your desk drawer. So
Yeah.
maybe put it somewhere like behind you or in a different
Mm,
space that you're not seeing every day, because it's reminding you every day, like,
Mm.
I'm not ready to look at that. And then you're just
mm,
kind of feeling badly about yourself, and that's not helpful. So,
right.
but I really do think like we're meant to do things when we're ready. I was meant to find these letters in
Yeah.
this season of my life. 100%. I totally believe that. The universe was whispering in my ear for whatever reason. And if I've learned anything, it's that when the universe whispers in our ear, we got to show up and pay attention.
Completely. Completely. I love that those letters were just there. And, as you said, the universe whispered to you and you found them exactly at the right time and you were ready, even though it sounded like you were nervous and scared of what it would bring up within you. You created that space and allowed for that. And what wisdom and experience came from that. I can't even imagine reading those letters and how all of a sudden dots were connected and feelings were able to move through you that you've been holding. I mean, I just think of you with a brand new baby being top of the top, like just going to, as you were avoiding what was there and also surviving, right? That first year with a new baby is survival. You didn't have your mother there with you for that. I
Mm.
mean, I can only have so much sympathy or empathy for you in that experience. A question I had for you when you shared your story, you talked about, when you heard the words, I have cancer, or you
Yeah.
have cancer, and you moved through and you had your daughters. How were you able, because you mentioned this, to support them and support yourself through this incredibly physically, emotionally, spiritual process of cancer treatment, yet having girls at this age where they really need their mom and I'm sure we're having lots of feelings. So how did you navigate? Like, what was your best tool or tools to help you through that
When I look
and
back,
them?
yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I think I'll honestly say not very well.
Mm.
And, I think that I did the best I could at that time to survive, but I was so triggered by everything that I had gone through with my mom, and I didn't see it. And
Sure.
so, I remember like sobbing on the table as this amazing doctor did the biopsy, and he's like, Dara, you need to prepare yourself. I'm like 99.9% sure this is breast cancer. And I was just sobbing and I was saying, like, no, no, you don't understand. It can't be, because I lost my mom when I was relatively young, and my daughters are 11 and 14, and they can't lose me, and this can't be happening again. And I was just like, it was the worst possible thing that could happen.
Yeah.
And I absolutely did not have the skills to navigate through it. And then on top of that, just kind of saying, okay, I'm going to be as aggressive as possible, and I'm going to have surgery and do chemo, and I'm going to go ahead and do radiation because why not? And,
Mm.
we're going to do genetic testing, and thank God, nothing showed up. But I think that it was just so hard for me on a day-to-day basis at that time. Like, I felt sick every day. I was so nauseous. And losing my hair was devastating. And then my daughters kind of seeing me like that. They were so used to kind of seeing me like put together in my really cute outfits. And, then they saw, this bald, skinny woman looking back at them. And so, that saying, it takes a village. We had so much support. My dad and my stepmom actually came here every other week for like 4 months. And when I had chemo, they literally like came here, stayed with me, basically like took over with the kids because my husband's an attorney, he was at work, and they were just here in the house. And that was amazing. We had a lot of friends help us through all of it. I started going to not one, but 2 counselors, but they didn't know about each other.
You were cheating.
I was, but like I
cheating.
needed it. And my daughters had counselors as well. And I think we did the best we could. And I had so much guilt for what I was forcing them to go through, even though I didn't do it on purpose. I would just look at them and I would think like, oh my gosh, why is this happening to my family? Why are they having to deal with this? And I would feel terrible. And so it was just kind of one of those things that I finally got to the space where I was like, okay, I can't live like this. I've got to figure it out. And that's when I did so much work on myself. That's when I quit my job. I started Crazy Perfect Life. I started writing. I started practicing Kunelini yoga and meditating every day. And I just really kind of became a different version of myself. And, I think it's very much impacted both my daughters, not only because of what they went through, but also because of, I think they've seen me change so much. And, I think they kind of are open to new opportunities as well, or doing work on themselves. I mean, they get that life can be hard, and that we have choices when life is hard. And, at the time I didn't recognize that, but I do today. And I think they do as well.
Had to be amazing for them to witness that
Yeah,
transformation in you, because it
Yeah.
sounds pretty dramatic. Like you literally came to this point. It's like, I need to choose a different way. And
Yeah,
then
completely. Yeah.
it's amazing.
And it wasn't until I had this book come out that I really talked to my daughters, because we would do so many events all through the pandemic, and they were virtual, of course. And so like Zoe would be doing them from college, and Avi would be doing it. She was a senior in high school, and we would just do so many events. And we really talked about some things that we had never talked about, like, the loss of my mom. Did you feel that? Do you remember that? Just all these things that we had never really talked about. So that was kind of amazing to be able to have some of those conversations.
What, tell us about some of your books that you've written. You said you wrote several books, and your most recent one.
Yeah. So my first book is called Crush Cancer, and it has a workbook to go with it. And it's really, the book that I felt like I needed when I was diagnosed with cancer. And the first half of the book is sort of everything that I went through. But the second half is, okay, now that you've gone through cancer, how are you going to move forward and live the rest of your life knowing that that had happened to you? Because I really struggled with that. Like, how can I not let fear follow me around for the rest of my life? And how do I make peace with the fact that this happened? And so it's really, I felt like the book that I needed. And then I Am My Mother's Daughter is just a book I never planned on writing, but I'm so incredibly proud of it. And it's, for every daughter, for every mother, for your girlfriends, for everyone who wants to have a close relationship with the people that they love and care about, but they don't know how. And it talks a lot about, obviously, my story, but the power of the written word and how to establish traditions and leaving a legacy, and just how to create the relationships that I think a lot of us want, but we don't know how to get them.
So actually, I love that. So let me ask you, how do we create the relationships? I think that's the $1 million question here. How do we create these healthy relationships that we so want and desire. Like it's in our hearts, we're wired for connection, right? And then, yet we're walking around some of the loneliest people on earth. We have tons of people around us, but we're just so lonely and disconnected.
Yeah, so many different ways. Number one is intention. Like if you want to have a close relationship, then you have to say, okay, I'm actually going to be intentional about it. I'm going to make it a priority. I'm going to do things every day to sort of nurture my relationships. That doesn't mean that I'm going to like zone out on social media or scrolling through my phone when I'm with my kids or my spouse. I'm going to like actually show up and be present and be intentional. I mean, if you want something, you have to work towards it. It's not going to happen by accident. Another thing is you've got to remove judgment. Like if I feel like someone's judging me, I just put up a barrier and I don't want to have any part in that at all. And if you, so many times during these events that I would do, like teenage girls would say to me, like, I want to have a close relationship with my mom, but all she does is judge me all the time. And I don't want, I just, all she can do is pick on me and tell me what I'm doing wrong. And so we've got to remove judgment. If we want to be close to someone, we have to sort of accept the child, the person, the spouse, the parent that we have, and love that person unconditionally. And I think so many times we don't. We want things to be clean and neat, and we want this person to be clean and neat, but life is messy and we're messy. And so, I would just say unconditional love is so important. And then we have to be willing to have these hard conversations. If there's something that happened or that you haven't talked about, or there's tension, go to that person and say, like, hey, I've been thinking about this and it's really important to me that we talk about this because I feel like it's a barrier, or I feel like it's getting in the way of our relationship, or I just feel like I've done something and I want to kind of talk through it, or whatever the situation is. But take some risk and be vulnerable and be willing to have some hard conversations, because on the other side of those hard conversations is where the magic is gonna start. And I can't stress that enough. So many times people are afraid, but you've got to ask yourself, like, what's the worst that can happen? If you go to someone and you say, let's talk about it, and they say, what's the worst that can happen? They say no. Okay, then they said no. But probably that's not going to happen. But, I would always want to know that I did everything I could to have a close relationship with someone if it mattered to me. And so I'm willing to put myself out there. And I think, a lot of times it's just sort of being aware that we have the ability, the choice, the power to do that. And that we don't have to accept the situation that we currently have. We can work on it and we can make it better.
So I love that response. And then I have a part B to that $1 million question. So this is the $2 million question. We're upping the ante now. So, and it goes with your quote as well. Is there a time then, like if you're saying judgment is a big barrier to close relationships, right? Yeah. Is there a time when, all right, so let me back up. If we take the judgment out, then we're maybe more in a space of open-heartedness because we're not judging the other. Is there a time when we need to walk away from a relationship, or do we just keep working hard at being open-hearted and being in non-judgment and, all love and peace and happiness?
I love that question. And I have so many thoughts. And I just want to make sure I hit them all, and I'm afraid I'm not going to, but there's different seasons. So what I mean when I say that is, like, when I was raising my daughters and they're both in college, my job was to be their parent, not their best friend. They had a lot of BFFs, but they had one mom. And so I had to make hard parenting decisions that they didn't always like, but that doesn't mean I necessarily was judging them. I was just I was showing up and I was doing my job. And so I do believe there's different seasons for relationships, and relationships grow as we all grow and we all change. I think your question of, is there a time where, okay, we've exhausted this much energy trying to work on a relationship and we're not being met halfway? Is there a point where we have to accept? Because I think what you're saying is, does acceptance come into it? And we have to say like, okay, it is what it is. And I do 100% believe the answer is yes, because, I have friendships that there were times when we were really, really close, and, that was great in that season, but maybe I've changed and I've grown, or maybe they have, and we don't have the same connection. That doesn't mean that I wish that person any ill will and vice versa. But it means that I have to be willing to kind of like let go and release it and make space to meet new people, and to have room to have new relationships. But, at the end of the day, I think accepting that there are seasons of friendships and not everyone is meant to travel through our lives together forever. But I mean, when it comes to like my daughters and my husband and my dad and my brother and my family, I'm going to do everything I can to have a close relationship with those people. And at some point, if you're not being met halfway and you feel like, okay, you know what, I've done everything that I can do and I'm feeling badly about it. Yes, there has to be, permission to accept it is what it is. And that doesn't mean that you hold anger or guilt or a grudge, because then you're just hurting yourself. So you have to kind of give yourself permission to make peace with that. And it's not easy. But, we have to do that for ourselves. But when we hold on to negativity, or when our hearts are in a space where we're just bitter and we just, we want that person to meet us halfway and they're not, and we can't let go of that, we're just hurting ourselves. And so, at some point, self-love has to be sort of the driver in that space.
Yeah, I love the different season aspects, and, just that acceptance of what it is, because we can only do so much. And at some point there's that release in
Absolutely.
some situations.
And I'll say, just COVID has really taught me a lot about friendships. And, this has been one of the lessons that I've learned from COVID, is that it's been hard for friendships. And I think, I talk to a lot of people, and I think a lot of people feel that as well. Like some people, their relationships have grown with some of their friends because maybe they viewed things the same way, or they saw the pandemic the same way, or they were making choices that were similar. And then other people weren't, and that they were friends with. And maybe they've grown apart. And so I think COVID has really taught us that there are really different seasons for friendships. And it just is what it is.
And that intentionality behind all of it as well. I love the season aspect. You just mentioned friends, but also with your daughters, and how going and, talking about your book and having these events with your daughters has created conversations you may not have had. And I would imagine because they're both in college, it's really opened it up, because you're transitioning into a different parent role, and a different relationship. So you could have those. And I just thought of, what did you, so the hard conversations and learning about them in ways that you may not have known, or they didn't know how to articulate to you when they were an early adolescent. And what an opportunity to deepen your relationship with your daughters.
I always say, like, I love the season that I'm in because I want to make the most out of my present moment. But I can honestly say that, like, I love where my daughters are now. I love that they're, in this space where I'm not nagging them about what time they're going to come home, or, what they have to get done, or who they're with, or if they've done their homework, or blah blah blah. Like, we're not in that space anymore. And we're kind of more in the friend zone a little bit, because I'm not raising them necessarily. And so they come to me for advice a lot, and we talk at least once a day. And it's just really beautiful, and they're super close. And I think that's the biggest gift that I can give them, is to help them see that the relationship they have with each other is sacred, and to nurture it, because I want that for them. And I think it's really important.
So one other question, I have lots of questions, but
Did you go to 3 million now? Are you in the?
Yeah, we're at 3 million now.
Yes.
So here we go, $3 million question. And this is a really should be more like 5 million, because Tia and I really, we talk about this one and struggle. And so if you have the answer for this, 5 million to you, Dara. But so talking about daughters. So I have a 22-year-old son and a 19-year-old daughter. And I do have a really good relationship with both my kids, and particularly my daughter, because not more, just different because we're same sex. And she's at college. And what I struggle with is in terms of, like you were saying about the judgment piece. And like you even said, you don't tell them about their homework, who they're with, what they're doing. And my daughter shares a lot with me. So I know who she's with. I know she's been struggling with one particular class this semester. And then I know she's also like having a good time and going out. And in my mind, I'm saying to myself, I'm judging like, oh, did she spend enough time on her schoolwork? If she fails this class, did she do everything she could possibly do? Is she using her gym membership? Is she spending too much time with this one? And so and where the question is like, where's the fine line between what is normal, healthy concern, worry as a mom for your child versus, is this, for me, I'll speak to myself, moving into unhealthy behavior of I'm too enmeshed, I'm crossing over too much and worrying about what she's doing. And then that energy that comes from me to her, even if the words don't come out,
it stresses her out. Yeah. She
can feel the energy of my mom's not okay with everything that I'm doing, because she's asking me 50 questions a day about my schoolwork and my grades. And if I've talked to my professor and,
Right.
so she knows where I'm going with that. So do you know where's the balance?
I hear what you're saying 100%. So a couple thoughts. Boundaries are a beautiful thing. And that's a word that I'm really kind of carrying into 2022, because I see more every day. But so it's her, she's in college now, and she's working hard or not for her future.
Yeah.
And the stakes are high for her. And so I don't micromanage my daughter's grades at all. They share with me, and that doesn't mean I won't share my opinion.
Okay.
Like Avi is my youngest daughter. She's a freshman in college. I can say, Avi, is it a great idea for you to go to that party if you have exams? And then, a lot of times she'll say, I've got this, Mom. And I'll say, okay, because at the end of the day, they know what's at stake. It's their future. It is not for you to do it for them. They have to make that choice. And so, to be perfectly honest with you, like, I have released all of that. I honestly don't even want to know. Like, I remember being at a freshman orientation meeting with my daughter, and all the parents and the orientation leader. And I remember this mom raising her hand and saying, how do I get the password to be able to go in and check my daughter's grades? And I'm thinking like, okay, what the fuck? And I was judging. Judging, because I'm like, okay, let it go, because it's not my future. It's their future. And I think my daughters fully understand that they have the choice to create the magic for themselves or not. I can't do it for them. We can help them figure out and, deal with challenges and figure out, tools or where they can go if they need help. Absolutely. But the day-to-day micromanagement of grades and homework and projects and exams, let it go. Set a boundary for yourself, because you don't need to carry that weight on your shoulders anymore. And I think it's healthier for our kids to own that themselves. I really do. And I will say that when you have a close relationship with your kids, they're going to do things that you're going to see, and you're going to think like, okay, that is not a great choice. But we have to let them fail. We have to let them fail. And I would much rather my daughters fail in college and learn the lesson than later on down the road. Now, again, I will say to them, do you really think it's a great idea to go out, or, whatever I think I need to say, because I'm still going to show up and be their parent, be their mom, but then I'm going to let it go, because they get to decide if they're going to go to that party or not, or if they're going to go to the library and study. And I don't want to have any ownership in that.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. It does get messy. And I love what you said about boundaries are a beautiful thing, because and I don't ask her on a day-to-day. It's when she shares with me, I think I'm failing this class, or I'm really struggling in this class. And then, I think where it comes into, and I think this is where I can set a boundary, is, okay, if you fail the class and you lose the grant money that you have, because now now this is $18,000 more a year now that dad and I have to come up with, or if you have to repeat that class and take it over, that's another $3,000 for you to repeat that class. Like that.
Instead of going to that space, because that's really, that's a fear space. You're afraid that she's going to fail, and then there's going to be a financial consequence. So
yes,
maybe you could reframe it. And what can you do to help yourself not fail? What can you do today to help yourself?
Ask her instead of me telling her, which let me tell you, I told you, go see your professor, go to his office hours, spend time.
At the end of the day, like, you actually can't do anything to help her pass that class.
I can't.
What do you do to own it, to do it? And at the end of the day, like, okay, if she did fail the class, the world is not going to fall, you know? And maybe there's consequences. Maybe she needs to take out a student loan for the amount of money since she failed the class. Like, right? Like, we always fix everything for our kids. But I do think when they're in college, it's time for them to kind of take some ownership. I'll say, and I hope I have time to say this, but over Thanksgiving, when my oldest daughter was getting her tonsils out, my youngest daughter was home, and she had like a huge paper due right after Thanksgiving. And she wasn't doing it. She was procrastinating. And my husband was kind of like, why are you not doing this? You need to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, John, why are you doing this? This is totally on her. And I was so much happier, like, not taking any ownership of it. But I also realized, like, I'm happier when they're at school and they deal with their own, like, school stuff, not in my house, so that I don't have to see it.
Yeah. Or hear about it in the same way.
Because it is hard to kind of watch, all of that. So I just kind of realized that. So
I love that. Thank you.
We had a similar sorry.
Our kids don't come with manuals.
I know.
No, they don't. I had a similar thing over Thanksgiving too, because both were home and lots of work. And she's like, I just need to, I'm like, take a break. And then she was saying, I should be doing it. And it's like, should you? And I just remember having that same thought. I'm like, it's so much easier when I don't see it in my face.
We don't feel the
same way. Yeah. And then on Sunday, she got all her stuff done once I dropped her off, because she's back in that environment. And, they need that break.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know why they give intense homework like that over Thanksgiving.
I know,
break.
That's
a separate podcast for sure. I know.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, so Tia has some rapid, unless there's more questions you have, Tia, around what we've been talking about, or do you want to jump right into the rapid fire questions?
Well, we could just continue talking, no doubt.
Yes.
But we want to be mindful of the time. Is there anything else you want to share before I ask you the last minute questions?
No, thank you. This has been so fun.
Great. All right. So whatever comes to your mind first, trust it.
Okay.
So we are masks off. So we wear the perfectionist mask, all that. So what's the most prominent mask that you put back on? Which one shows up most often for you?
I am a perfectionist. I put a lot of pressure on myself.
Yeah.
I'm learning daily to let it go.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
At least I can see it.
Exactly. Because once we can see it, then at least we know. And it can get sneaky, but at least we know it's there. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go right now?
Right now, I would just go anywhere, because I haven't been anywhere in like almost 2 years, but I love Europe, and I would go to Europe. It's my favorite.
Yeah. What is your favorite way to take care of yourself?
Practicing Kunelini yoga. I found it, or I should say it found me a few years ago, and it's changed my life. it's probably the biggest thing that has helped elevate me and manage stress
Mhm.
and anxiety more than anything.
Love that. I love too how you even just talk about it.
Hmm.
You can feel it.
Yep, completely. It's
I love
not just lip service. It's like your
No.
whole body and your whole essence. That was beautiful. All right, it's kind of similar where you go in the world, but if you have a bucket list, and if you don't, that's okay. But if you do, what would be at the top of the list?
I do love every year to kind of like create a bucket list and an anti-bucket list for like that year. I feel like I'm so confused because like the last 2 years, like, but I want to be able to write whatever I want to write, and I want it to get published. Like I want it to be easy. And so like my bucket list is to produce a book once a year, and
Wow.
just be able to write it and send it to the editors, and like just get in that space of it not being hard. It just, because it can be a hard, challenging environment to kind of make that happen. But that's for sure my bucket list.
Love it. And you've done it. I mean, you
Yeah,
are a published author. So
there's-
now to have that intention is
Thank you.
beautiful. I love
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
Love that. And the last question, speaking of books, is what is one book, hard to choose, but what's one book that's changed your life?
Yeah, so I'm the kind of person that is always reading like 5 to 7 books at one time. Always. It depends on my mood. And I read like 3 or 4 books a day, meaning like if I have 20 minutes, I'll sit down and I'll be like, I have book piles all over my house. It's actually becoming a problem, but The Untethered Soul is a book that I really like.
Love that book.
It's kind of really, I think books, they speak to us in the right season that they're meant to speak to us. Not to use that terminology again, but like if you have a book that is in your house and you read it like 20 years ago, but for whatever reason it's still there, and then you're drawn to it and you pick it up, it's because it's going to talk to you in a different way than it did 20 years ago. And so, I love to go back and revisit books, but that's just one that's sort of kind of been speaking to me lately.
I love that book.
Awesome.
Have you picked it up since it's been speaking to you again?
Oh yeah, it's in my kitchen. I have it.
It's in the pile.
Oh, it's in a pile. It's in the kitchen pile. Yeah. Yeah.
And I love
goodness.
and what's so great about that book too, and a lot of them, is you don't have to sit down and read the whole. You can just pick it up and like, I'm going to read this chapter. I'm going to read what he has to say about that. And there's always wisdom in
always
there.
wisdom. I love that. Yeah.
So thank you so much for being a guest on our show. And for our listeners and our viewers, if they want to reach out and find you, how can they find you?
So my blog is crazyperfectlife.com. And of course, there's links to everything. There's 5 free gifts they can get on my blog to download if they buy my book. There's links to get a signed copy, just all the things. My largest following's on Facebook, and it's at Crazy Perfect Life. And then I'm on Instagram as well, and that's at Crazy Perf Life. And they can email me, Dara at crazyperfectlife.com, and reach out. I love doing virtual events. It's kind of like, are we back to doing virtual events? I don't know. Are we doing in person? It's all so confusing, but
it is.
I love hearing from people. So, if anyone feels called to reach out to me, don't hesitate to.
Fabulous.
And we will have all of that in the show notes as well. We'll put all that in there. So easy to find.
And thank you both for, all the beautiful work that you're doing in the world. And, I think when we all try to show up and help each other, everyone wins. So you're definitely contributing to that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my
Love
goodness.
the conversation, and, go get her book. It's out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a great holiday gift for sure.
That's right. Yes, exactly. All right, everyone, have a lovely day.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Dara, again, for being on. It was such a great conversation.
It was.
Such a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.